Hello and welcome to the Motoring Chronicles. In this episode we sit down with Rod Camm, CEO of MTA Queensland, who is fresh from his visit to Auto Shanghai 2025 as part of the AADA, that's the Australian Automotive Dealer Association, study tour. Auto Shanghai is, of course, an absolutely gigantic motor show, stuffed to the brim with new vehicles, concepts, cutting-edge tech, and all the usual trimmings. And as such, it would be just as fantastic an event to visit for any car enthusiast, just as an auto show. However, because this is China, it is a bit more important than that. China's car makers are world leaders in many areas, of course, but perhaps most importantly for us in Australia, they seem to view this country as an excellent market for their products. We have seen plenty of brands and models arrive here in just the past couple of years, so there is clearly some benefit to be had from an Australian automotive industry perspective of getting to see what their industry is doing on their home turf. After all, it is worth noting that not only is China's new vehicle market the world's largest, with some 30 million new vehicles sold there every year, it is also one of the most electrified, with more than 12 million battery, electric and hybrid vehicles sold there in 2024. With those sort of numbers, it seems clear that the technology that China's car makers are building and demonstrating today will probably appear on Queensland roads in the not too distant future. So, with all that in mind, let's find out more about what Rod and the other delegates on the AADA study tour discovered at Auto Shanghai, the show, as well as the dealerships and car makers that they visited across the city. Rod, let's talk about Auto Shanghai, the motor show first. So your general impressions, what did you make of it being there? Because watching from Australia, it certainly looked like some truly enormous, gigantic and impressive event.
Look, it just... The only description is it completely catches you off guard, the sheer size of it. Like, I've been to motor shows in Australia, they're glitzy and glamorous and all those other things, but this, it just, it is so big, it covers so much territory, there's multiple levels across acres of land, and the crowds it generates are nothing short of amazing. Like, it's absolutely sold out and people love it. So you see people trawling over new cars, some old cars are there, or reinvented vintage cars that are now electric, everything from, VW Beetles and all that sort of thing. So the Chinese, when they do something, they do it big. So it was certainly, in terms of its sheer size and glamour, a high-quality, impressive show.
All right, so Chinese manufacturers and brands are arguably leading in many aspects of auto technology and manufacturing and so on. So were there dominant themes or messages that you picked up while you were strolling around the show?
So there's a couple of elements to that. Like, we strolled the entire show over a day. It was, by the end of the day, you're pretty tired, but there are so many brands coming out of China or in China. Lots of them we've never heard of in Australia, right? I think there's a same feeling to it. Like, a lot of them seem the same, like different brands, but look very, very, distinctly similar. And we're not talking all of them at the lower end of the price range. So these are very expensive vehicles. Yeah. And you also see your clones, you see Land Cruisers, you see Land Rovers, and you go, oh, hang on, no, they're not. So you see those, but their technology, you touched on it. They are very, very focused on the tech experience in their motor vehicles. I think they would even argue that that's more important for the younger generation than the car itself. But they're also very, they were very open with us when talking to some of the OEMs that despite all the tech they put in them, a lot of people get in their car, attach their iPhone, and that's the tech they use.
Oh, really?
Be that for music, be that for navigation, be that for whatever.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. But they're into tech. I think autonomous driving, for example, they would argue they've got that sorted. It's done. Like you saw them on the road, people leaning back in their seat in the car, driving itself along the road. So that's all technology. But
so that autonomous driving that you just mentioned there, was that sort of actually when you were strolling around Shanghai?
In the streets. We're sitting in a bus and we saw them go past, right? And you sort of go, that's interesting. But technology is really big. And we went to an innovation summit there as well, where a guy talked to us about the motor vehicle industry compared to the traditional manufacturers in Europe who he also worked for. And I think this is fair. The history of a lot of our manufacturers, it's their biggest strength, right? But it's their weakness because it's harder to innovate. It's harder to slash red tape. It's harder to, make bold steps because there's a reputational risk to the brand. Well, that doesn't exist in China. They go, no, we're going to do it. And Zeekr, as an example, got into quite a lot of hot water in China because they brought out a model car. I can't remember which one it was, but 6 months later replaced it with the next version because the tech had changed. Right. And of course, everyone's saying, you've just devalued my car and you just bought it. It was Australian equivalent, $160,000 car, so an expensive car. Wow. So they're in a rush. And what they also don't do, in Australia, the Australian cars we drive, which are largely European, Japanese, Korean, new technology tends to be released in the higher end car, like BMW, or put it in the 7 Series, and it'll slowly trickle down. That's not the Chinese way. If they've got a base grade car coming out and they've just invented a new tech, it goes in. Wow. There's just let 1,000 flowers bloom, I believe one of their former leaders said.
Yeah, okay. So that's interesting because I had read somewhere else or heard somewhere else that I don't know if this is actually true, but someone had posited that someone like one of the major Chinese brands might come up with some amazing piece of tech or innovation, and they'll almost like create a new brand in which to say, right, well, this is the brand in which we do this. So one brand might have a dozen or more brands underneath it.
Yeah, that's right. I think you look at Geely and places like that. Yeah. That's what's sort of emerging under it. And Australian dealers, it's a challenge for them to manage some of that because suddenly there's a competitor's car introduced, same group, and that's not the traditional way of doing it, right? Yeah. So there's almost no rules. They're just into innovation and they'll just keep doing it. And it's hard to imagine. This is the challenging piece. You drive a high-end European car, they're fantastic quality. It's just hard to imagine anywhere in the world can keep up with China in technology. It's just hard to imagine. Yeah. Yeah. And they gave us some examples with iPhones and things like Apple was once considered an innovator. In China, they're considered old world and bureaucratic. Wow. Is that true? And they showed us an example, right? So we said, could someone give me your iPhone? So one of the delegates gave him the iPhone and the presenter smashed it on the floor, completely smashed the screen. And this guy wasn't that happy. We're overseas. You need contact with your family. Of course. And he said, just wait. So he gave it to his colleague who got on an app. About 4 minutes later, this young bloke with a backpack turns up, looks around, gets in his backpack, fumbles about. The screen's finished about 14 minutes later.
No way.
Australia, you book in to go to the Genius Bar. That'll take a week. Yeah. Probably cost you $100. Yeah. Now, they've got a population to feed as well, so I guess this sort of innovation emerges like that. But it's just an example that they're cutting corners and they've already got drones delivering their shopping and this, again, we were shown an example of you go into a store, you can buy a bottle of water or you can get it delivered, same price, and you buy it and then you order it, you will not beat that delivery home. Wow. You just go, wow, I don't understand this.
That's just remarkable stuff, isn't it?
And my point is that's got nothing to do with the automotive industry. No. That's what China's doing, including in the automotive industry, really focusing on technology.
So the stuff that you saw in technology at the auto show and other places you visited, the OEMs and so on, that's going to flow through to us at some point soon? Sure. Or?
Well, dare I mention it, that's a lot to do with Trump, isn't it? So if the Chinese manufacturers can't export cars to China, they'll export, to the US, they'll export them somewhere. Yes. And Australia is certainly a likely market. And we were over there with the Canadian delegation of dealers as well. Yes. They don't have a single Chinese brand in Canada.
Wow.
which was fascinating to us. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So Australia is seen as a viable market, even though, we drive on the wrong side of the car.
I'm so sorry, but why does Canada not have?
No, well,
any
they couldn't explain it. They don't know. Maybe their population's so dispersed.
Yes.
They've got a couple of big cities like Toronto, but
Sure.
that was really intriguing.
Mm.
So they were very fascinated by it. This was like mind-boggling stuff for them. But there's no way you'll see all the brands. There's too many of them.
Sure.
Right? There's just too many. But the Chinese, I think Australians are buying Chinese cars. I think the data shows that.
Yep.
And that will continue, mainly because they're price competitive. But China are also trying to bring their premium cars here, and it'll be interesting to see how people react to that.
And it'd be nice, but don't you think so? Just to talking of BYD, I think they have is it their super performance brand Yang Wang or something? They got the U9 supercar. That's pretty special. Did you happen to see that?
Yep.
You did.
Yep. They bring out their specials, and it's amazing. Again, a different brand, but BYD is. I think they are probably a quality manufacturer now. You'd have to accept.
Yes. Mm. Okay, so my understanding is that electrification, fully battery electric or hybrid, that was what made up the majority of models that you would have seen at the show.
Battery electric, certainly.
Yeah,
they are very much into battery electric, and there's some reasons for that.
Yeah.
They've had pollution problems for a long, long time. So if you drive an ICE vehicle in China, you can only drive it every second or third day, right? You have a blue number plate.
Yes.
If you've got a green number plate, which is electric, you can drive it every day.
Yes.
So there's an instant incentive to go, okay, this is worth it.
Yeah.
You can drive it every day. And we're in Shanghai, and I've got to say, there was no pollution problems. It was very clean and very quiet.
Yes.
Because all the cars were electric. All the scooters, Asia's famous for, lots of them in Shanghai, but they're all electric, every single one of them.
Wow.
We saw some hybrids, and interestingly, we spent some time at our traditional dealerships like a Mercedes.
Yes.
And they sell very few hybrids. Very few, like
right.
2 a month maybe.
Right.
This massive dealership, and they said, well, because the Chinese ones are a lot cheaper and they're good.
Fair enough.
Interesting. So what that tells us, if you're a traditional buyer and you want a Mercedes, you buy a traditional Mercedes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will come back to the dealership visits that you made if we could.
Yep.
So electrification was dominant for those reasons and so on. But that one little snippet of news that made it over here was the GWM revealed a twin turbo V8, which was I thought that was an eye-opening little thing, that they are dabbling in this sort of stuff as well. So they're not just turning away from.
Well, no. Well, 60% of the sale of electric vehicles in the world's in China, so they're looking after their own market, right? But the Chinese are good at doing comparative studies, and they'd know only 4% of sales in Australia are electric, right? Mm-hmm. So they'd be thinking, why are all those guys driving big, massive utes and we're producing sporty little EVs? The Australian psyche's not there yet. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And the US is the same. And certainly parts of Europe, obviously the Nordic countries are into electric vehicles, but the rest of it's all sort of still steady as she goes. So China has been a trading nation since the beginning of time, so they spot opportunities.
Yeah. Now, given that, though, it was mainly electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and you also, as you rightly point out, that Chinese manufacturers are making serious inroads into the market here. MTA Queensland has not been silent about the industry looking at training and getting ready for EVs and electrified vehicles. So it seems to me, given what you said about Auto Shanghai, it seems more important than ever that, hey, look, there's an even bigger flood coming. Yeah,
so our message to the current industry, and I mean the technicians across the country, really, is that you really got to start preparing now, skill up now, don't wait, because they are appearing, and the skills you learn around battery electric are equally applicable to hybrid vehicles, which Australians are embracing. They're great technology. And there's going to be more and more of them. Now, in saying that, I'm a bit worried about the flood of Chinese vehicles that will come, not because they're Chinese or not because of any other reason, but they don't seem to have, from our discussions with them, they don't really have a strategy around how they're going to skill techs on their vehicles, because OEMs are pretty specific. right? So there's no real strategy there, no transparent one anyway. And also the whole supply, like the supply of parts and things, there's some real problems there because they'll bring the cars here, maybe not the supply chain in terms of delivering for repairs and the like. So it's something for our industry to make sure government's aware that we need to protect consumers and all the message is we need to ensure that stuff's done up front.
So why is that, do you think, that they're like that?
Well, I think they want to sell cars. They're into the market, so they'll engage with dealers and hope their techs can manage it. But I don't think that's fair on dealers. I think there has to be a strategy to help upgrade their knowledge. Like technicians are pretty smart; they can work out vehicles.
Sure.
But, if the technology in the Chinese vehicles is leading edge, we need to make sure that we do this safely and properly.
Yeah. Again, sorry to been to harp on about the technology, but everything that I've seen, it seems like there seem to be cars that offered level 4 autonomous driving, covered in LiDAR and radar and stuff like that. Is that just something that's almost like normal?
It is.
Because it's certainly not here.
Ubiquitous over there. Yeah. Like at the show, for example, lots of vehicles had all that. It was almost like a robot vacuum cleaner on wheels, on car wheels. Yeah. So that technology's there. Yeah. Right? It's absolutely there and they're using it.
Yeah.
I don't think I had no way of assessing whether the road infrastructure is ready for that because, of course, for that to work, it's got to have, be picking up signals as it goes. Yes. Because I remember the trial we participated in Ipswich.
Yes.
I've got no sense of that, but it doesn't seem to bother them. They're out using it.
Incredible.
And, of course, their roads are really busy.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Like most of their roads really are more car parks. And because they're all driving.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So look, you went to Auto Shanghai 2 years ago, didn't you?
No, I went to Beijing.
Auto China, different one.
Yeah.
Okay. But was that last year or a couple of years?
It was, last year. Yeah. And Auto Beijing was fantastic as well. Shanghai was bigger.
Yeah.
And the cities are very different. So Beijing's your old world, traditional bureaucratic Chinese.
Yes.
Shanghai's this open, exciting modern city.
Okay. Okay. Well, so they're two different shows, but hey, I'm guessing that pretty much all the same people were there. So is there, in that short period of time, did you get a sense of anything developing?
I think the autonomous vehicle stuff was a lot more obvious.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, a lot more obvious.
Okay.
I think there were more brands that we didn't see in Beijing. Now, that could be because of location. It could be that they're new because these manufacturers just pop up.
Right.
Hence my suspicion about same.
Yes.
But apart from that, you just walk around, and we made sure we sort of participated in the show. So we're in the stands trying to talk to people. We went to a shopping mall, right? So we're those auto malls where they had like 30 brands, and we had a really good different exposure. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well let's move on to the AADA study tour if we could. Mm-hmm. So that study tour included obviously the visit to Auto Shanghai, but you did some visits to, as I understand it, auto dealerships in Shanghai and talked to some OEMs too. So saw some presentations. Can you tell us about what you saw, heard, and learned from those visits?
So it's really just building on what we've just talked about.
Yeah,
I think the dealership experience was very similar to what we have here. The Mercedes dealership, yes, impressive, huge in size, huge. But, the same big glass box, really flash cars on the floor, lots really well-dressed staff, and I mean that in a complimentary way.
Sure.
Their service department was, very clean and neat and professional, and had lots of hoists and techs working. So really, you'd close your eyes and open them. You could have easily been in the middle of a dealership in Australia, except the size of it. It was bigger.
Yeah.
They were very open about their sales and profit margins and trends. And I think Mercedes is a brand that hasn't quite yet started to compete with all of the emergence of the new vehicles. So their sales were down. They were really honest with us, and EVs were nowhere. But apart from that, certainly the dealers on the study tour I got a real lot out of that because they were able to get into discussions about how do you do this, how do you do that. But the concierge model is alive and well.
Yeah, right.
We went to Zeekr.
Yes.
So one of their, I think they called it a a customer delivery centre rather than a dealership.
Right.
But the experience is similar, like high-end lounge experience, really luxurious, lots of glass, and they really looked after you as you walked in. And I think as a customer, we were watching them deal with customers, it's exactly the same. And I don't think it's dissimilar to a high-end dealership model in Australia. Very polite, very engaging, so it was good to watch. And I said at the Mercedes, we didn't sit at Zeekr, we were able to sit and sort of have a look at their techs and just see how that was working. They had the same sort of diagnostic tools and all that sort of stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Right.
The OEM one we spoke most to, and I think this is because they are most focused on Australia, is Zeekr.
Yes, right.
They want to sell a lot of cars here. Now, their cars are 150 plus, right? But they're about to introduce an $80,000 model. So they're watching the market and going, hang on, our price points are different.
Yeah.
And they were really open. They believe they are the premium tech brand in automotive in China.
Right.
That's their standing.
Okay.
And their tech's pretty cool. You walk up to their cars, Jonathan, with the key in your pocket.
Yeah.
And the cars, it's straight out of Back of the Future. The doors just open up as you get there. Look, there's something cool about that, right?
Yes.
Now, if they break, I don't want to even think about how you fix that. But that's the problem with technology. It's fantastic when it works.
Yeah.
And if you're in a rush, it probably doesn't if you've got the kids in one arm. And But so Zeekr is, I'd have to use the word aggressive. They're really focused. They're in Brisbane, of course.
Yes.
Big growth plans. It's hard to really believe that they can achieve it. But and as OEMs, we didn't get inside their manufacturing plant, which is a disappointment because you could have benchmarked with what we've seen in Europe.
Yeah.
Certainly a couple of the delegates were staying a few extra days and were going down to the BYD manufacturing plant. That would be fascinating.
Right.
Because we're told there's a really high degree of use of robotics, which most of the manufacturers do now.
Yes.
But so, I think China as the famous mimic, like, that's, you'd import a product to China only so it could be sold back to you as a different brand. I don't think that's the model anymore. They I'm sure they still observe and probably do push the boundaries around IP, but they're probably leading now in a couple of places, particularly tech, motor vehicle tech.
So when you were visiting these dealerships and things, were there innovations in what they're doing that might feed through to us here, or is it just a very similar sort of setup?
I think the innovations in the vehicles rather than their sales model.
Yeah, okay.
Australia's got good sales models. Our dealerships are all high quality. I didn't see, and I don't think the dealers I was with saw massive learnings there.
Yeah.
What they were interested in and how you're competing with these other brands, because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Okay, their population's 1.4 billion. So it's slightly different.
Yeah.
But we're seen as a premium market, hence why our cars are expensive.
Yes. I think I read that China there are 30 million new vehicle sales in China every year. I mean, it's astonishing, isn't it? It's enough. There's enough to go around for everybody.
Well, yeah. Oh, I'm sure. But I imagine they're all squeezed. But
yes, of course.
I'm not sure they set their price. I think prices you might find are set centrally there. But,
yes. Okay. Now, I noticed also, I think you went to a shopping mall.
Yeah.
And there were cars for sale through that. Now, I know we have an auto mall here in Brisbane.
We do. Yep.
Is that a similar sort of setup, or is that something different?
Similar. In fact, I thought the Eagers one here is better.
Oh, right.
So the Eagers one here has that slightly more enclosed space, so you get a bit of a dealership sense to it. These were just vehicles everywhere, all different brands. Certainly salespeople on the floor. It's really an initial contact, an initial view. So people would go there to have a look. They quoted some numbers about the cars they're selling every month. Astonishing numbers, but that's because it's China.
Sure.
But the sales transaction would happen elsewhere.
Right.
Right. But still, it's a great experience. We're walking around and, traditional brands were there as well. Toyota was there. So it was pretty interesting.
Talking about traditional brands and just back to the auto show for a moment, I think I did pick up that the Chinese brands were dominant. So Volkswagen was there, Audi was there, our Volkswagen Group were there, and I imagine some other European brands were there as well, but to a much smaller scale compared to their Chinese counterparts.
Oh, look, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the Chinese stands, I can only imagine what they cost. They were taking up half, those big exhibition halls.
Yeah.
Some of a single brand would take up one side of it, right? And you'd have 4 or 5 European ones on the other side. There was nothing wrong with the European brands. Like Porsche, as an example, you couldn't even get on their stand. It was just too crowded.
Yeah.
We tried a few times, but the BYDs, the Zeekas, the Rose, the Geely, they had massive stands and customer experience lounges, and you just sort of thought, wow, you're talking, I reckon, 10, 20 million bucks. Like it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they were packed.
Yeah.
I bet you they were selling cars.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So, as from your perspective as CEO of MTA Queensland and all that means for the industry in our state, and for the other CEOs that went with you, and for AADA as well, how should Australian and Queensland workshops, dealerships, training organisations as well be positioning themselves for in light of what you saw?
Really good question. I think before I get to the industry, I think there's layers to this.
Yeah.
I think government's got a role to play here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not convinced just allowing another 60 brands to turn up and start selling is good for the consumer.
Sure.
I appreciate the market. We want a market. But I think government has to ensure those things I mentioned earlier are part of the import. And that's about skilling Australians and skilling technicians. That's about ensuring an understanding of Australian consumer law and consumer protections, and understanding there is a service for warranty repair and servicing the vehicles, and the supply of parts as required. Because we hear horror stories about bumper bars and things that aren't available, and they're 16 months to get, right?
Sheesh.
If that's your car, that's pretty frustrating, right?
Absolutely.
So we think government's got a role to play that's not to say they can't come in, but say, hey, make sure, here's the plan, here's what you have to comply with, all right?
Yes.
I think that's logical.
Yep.
Then the industry just has to be ready. We have to brace ourselves. So, and the dealers, they're pretty innovative people, and they want to sell cars, and they understand the importance of having Chinese brands as part of their portfolio. So they're open-minded, and they'll meet with them, and they'll make their own selections. Most dealerships nowadays, it'd be very few dealership groups that don't have at least a couple of Chinese brands as well.
Yeah.
There's a cultural difference in dealing with Chinese OEMs versus the traditional ones that they're so used to.
Yeah.
If I'm really honest about it, the Chinese are less focused on the detail of the contract that you've signed.
Right.
They'll go, no, this is what we're going to do. All right. So that's just a cultural difference. Skill up. Make sure your people are as skilled as they can be in modern technology. And then it's about how do we keep the industry topped up.
Yeah. Sorry, what do you mean by topped up?
With skills.
With skills. Sorry, right.
So if you're a technician, you've probably been working on Priuses for 20 years, so you sort of know hybrid tech.
Mm-hmm.
Shows how advanced Toyota was then. And you can do top-up courses. And we as an industry association, our job is to keep finding the latest skills that they need. And I think we've been a bit slow with that, so we've got to be better at finding, and that might not be accredited even. Just here's the latest skill, here's a top-up course, get it online even, so we're having a look at some of that to help the industry. But it's going to be a ride, I think, Jonathan. I think we're going to see all these new cars, and we'll raise eyebrows, and they'll turn out to be pretty good. Yeah.
Last thing.
Yep.
So, in general, summary of your trip. Should we, as an industry, aftermarket, independents, the dealerships, should we be excited, concerned, nervous, anxious? What's the?
I don't think nervous. I think there should be an anticipation. There should be some excitement because it's going to be pretty innovative to watch.
Yes, but
be careful.
Yeah,
like we need the businesses have to do their due diligence here.
Yeah,
and make sure that the brand has got a support behind it or will support them behind it, particularly if there's ACL claims and things like that.
Sure.
And for the independent mechanics and the like, it's the journey's not dissimilar. They'll end up in their yards for sure. So they need a process to be able to engage in what's the latest technology and how do I fix it.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Actually, could I just one just little addendum? Motor shows in general. Now, you would probably be aware there was a motor show down in Melbourne a few weeks back.
I didn't get to it, so
apparently very successful and great. And it was lovely to see that one's back on the map.
So fantastic.
Do you think that there might be a comeback? I mean, it's so the industry. I mean, the cars are so radically different to what we were seeing a decade ago that maybe there's room for.
It's funny, So I'm told, because the associations used to run the motor show. MTAQ ran the motor show in Brisbane, right?
Yep.
And I'd love to run one, but industry tells me, my colleagues tell me that they eventually stopped because the OEMs didn't want to do them.
Sure.
Right? They just didn't see them as valuable. People were doing all their research online. Well, I'm based on now having done 2 big ones. Yeah. I'm going to call bullshit on that, right? Yeah. I think car enthusiasts love them.
Yep.
They were crawling over cars, and I just do not accept that lots of people there weren't there saying, okay, there's 3 cars I'm thinking of buying. I can see them all on the one day. And I reckon there is a market, particularly because of new technology.
Yes.
Right? And I think there has to be a discussion with OEMs about them, and certainly talking to SCAI and the like about them. The last couple of motor shows, some companies lost lots of money.
Right.
None of us want to see that.
No.
So it's about how do you right size it.
Yeah.
That's not how China approached it. They said, how do we just put everything on steroids? And but they're exciting. Walking around them is genuinely exciting.
Yes.
It's really good fun, and Australian car enthusiasts would flock to it. I think what you couldn't do, because you used to have one in Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, you couldn't do that.
No.
I think you'd say, okay, Eastern Seaboard, you have one a year.
Yeah.
Right, and we go to it. I think.
Yeah.
I think it'd work. I really do.
Oh, that's exciting to hear. It is exciting to hear someone up higher in the food chain say something like that. So,
well, I can't believe anyone who went to that show wouldn't come back and go, why aren't we doing it? And believe me, I've challenged some people about why aren't we doing it.
Excellent. All right. Well, maybe that's something that we can look forward to seeing down the track. Okay. Excellent. Rod, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Mate. Always a pleasure.
Cheers.